Good afternoon, everyone in person and online. Thanks for joining us. I would also just like to let everyone know in person and online, if you have any questions at all, please kind of wait until the very end. If it's very much a burning question that has to do with something that Mark has mentioned, can you please just make sure that you just put it in the chat, or if you're in person, just raise your hand and we'll address you. Any other specific questions will wait till the very end. And also too, I'll stop sharing. So if you wish to unmute or put yourself on camera, you're more than welcome to do so. So again, until then, just remain on mute online. And if you have any questions, please direct them to the chat. Again, burning questions right away. Those questions that you'll have just in general at the very end, we'll just wait until the very end and we'll let you know. I'm going to pass this over now to Barb from Trendbell, and she has a few words that she'd like to say. You can't quite see her in the screen here for online.
I'm hiding you, sorry, I do apologize. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. First, I want to thank Brianna for the invitation today. Working at Trendbell, we've been partnered with SBC, Small Business Center, for many years. And we're really grateful for opportunities like this. And I know you're in good hands today. We've met Marg several times over the years before the COVID pandemic, and I know she's got a lot to share, and we're really looking forward to today's presentation. So thank you for that. For those of you who may not know about Trendbell, Trendbell is a not-for-profit community futures agency. We're here to help businesses throughout all sections of business, from start, grow, and thrive. Our goal is to make you bankable. We would love the opportunity to tell you more about our services. If you'd like to give us a call at 613-961-7999, or you can email info@trendbell.ca. I'll hand out some pamphlets here, and if anyone has additional questions, you can also let Brianna know and follow up accordingly. Thank you so much.
For sure. So when I send out the recording and all the good information that Mark has to mention, and if you have any questions about Trendbell, feel free just to send me just a reply back to my email and I can forward you information. So I would like to introduce Margaret Hatchie. She is the Managing Director of the Ontario and Eastern Canada Grow Your Biz, and also to the owner and operation of Evergreen Business Group. Oh, I can hear the rain, sorry. So this workshop, you'll learn essentially how to transition from working in the business to working on your business. So topics covered, as mentioned, is 6 elements to run a successful business, how to replace your current position, essentially how to delegate, and learning how to stop doing those 20-hour jobs and essentially doing those $200 jobs. And again, moving from manager to CEO. I'd like to introduce Margaret.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you and welcome everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's my pleasure. So what I'm going to share with you today is a difficult transition that a lot of us business owners have to make. It's very difficult. You know, when we actually start a business, we start doing everything. We wear many hats. For example, we do all the things that's required. We do all the sales and marketing. We do all the finance. And what does that mean? Often it means doing all the invoicing, the collections, which is not always easy, doing all the accounts payable, making sure you pay your vendors and suppliers on time, and even reading all the reports, making sure you can analyze and read all of the financial reports. You also do all the purchasing and procurement, typically. Even if you're a service business, you know, and only need office supplies, someone has to go to Staples or someone has to get online and order the products you need. You do everything, all the dealing with vendors and suppliers as well, depending on the type of business you're in. We also do all the administration, and quite often that feels really cumbersome, because what are we doing? We're actually cleaning the office, making the coffee, doing all of those things that we have to do to run our businesses. So let me just ask you, First of all, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. So we have Lyle here with us. So Lyle, could you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little about your business that you are in and how long you've been in that business.
My name is Lyle Castleman. I work for Mac Global Engineering. I've been in the environmental consulting trade now for about 33 years, working for various engineering firms across Ontario.
Okay, very good. Welcome, Lyle. And I'm trying to read. So I see Christy there. Christy, could you unmute and introduce yourself? Or is it Christine?
Oh, hi. Sorry. Yeah, it's Kristen. There's an E on the end that likes to throw everybody off.
Thank you.
I own Brightly Bookkeeping Incorporated, and we do bookkeeping, small business development, payroll, all sorts of stuff under the sun. We help people with workflows and processes, and our clientele is all around Ontario.
Wonderful. And how long have you been doing that, Christine?
Since 2019. So I'm relatively new to my business. And I have one employee, and I'm at a pivoting moment where I just have way too much on my plate to keep doing everything myself. And well, my one employee is amazing, by the way, really amazing, but I need more help. And I am doing a lot of the strategic planning and development and everything. And I want to do more with my business, but I can't right now since I'm bogged down by everything else. So this came at the right time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you here today. And obviously your employee is with you too, I think. Anyway.
No, I'm actually at home.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm by myself. Well, I've got people at home, but nobody that I work with.
Okay, no problem. So and you've actually survived all through COVID, because if you started in 2019, you really didn't have much of a chance to get going yet. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. My business has actually gotten busier since COVID. Yeah, it's been great.
There's a big need. So
yes.
Congrats. Okay, the next one is TPMC, is it? Can you introduce yourself? Do you know who that is, Brianna?
I'm not sure. I don't have.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my name's Jason, and I run the Prototype Machining Center here in Belleville. My wife and I took over the business from a previous owner, and we've been running it for about 3.5 years now.
Very good. So you too have survived COVID.
Yes, very scary when we bought, and suddenly all this happened, and we wondered if we'd made a poor decision.
Right. But it sounds like you've hung in there. So congratulations. Is it just you and your wife in the business right now, Jason?
We have 2 employees as well.
2. Okay, very good. Thank you very much and welcome.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and then can you read that name below, Barbara? Stifa? Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, my name is Mustafa Ali, and normally I'm a student. I also have a side hustle. I sell e-commerce promo and marketing products online for companies.
Okay. So e-commerce online is your side hustle.
Yeah. So it's my side hustle, and I sell for B2B for companies, any promo and marketing products online.
Excellent.
It's a new business as well.
It's a new business?
Yeah.
Do you have a year under your belt or not yet?
No, it's under a year.
Under a year. Okay,
Yeah.
That's all right. It sounds like it's very timely. I know many businesses are looking to develop e-commerce platforms to sell their products on. So anyway, so thank you, Mustafa, for joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm sure all of you are probably doing all of the things I mentioned. You're wearing all those hats and you're really busy. And this is what happens. And what happens is as we're doing all of that, we also deliver the services. You know, it may be production, but maybe the one In Lyle's case, he's doing the consulting. In Christina's case, she's actually doing the bookkeeping for her clients. So you're actually providing the services as well as everything else. So what happens when you're doing so much? You become overwhelmed. Now, I don't know if any of you are currently overwhelmed or not, but if not, at some point in your business career, you will be. Things start to happen all at once. You get busier, you get 3 or 4 new clients at the same time. All the marketing you've been doing finally pays off. And you get to a point where you don't know what to do next. I know I was there in my business, and I'll share my story with you in a minute. But what do you do when you hit overwhelm? Well, you just stop, hit the brakes. I think that's really important. Then you do a brain dump, and I'm going to explain what these are after. And then you do an ask for help, which is probably foreign to a lot of us. As entrepreneurs, we tend to do it all ourselves, and we very rarely ask for help. Step 4 is to go back to basics. And step 5 is to scrap your plans and scale back. So let me take those one at a time. So step 1, as I mentioned, was just stop. Don't do anything. You have to realize you've hit the wall, basically. And the quickest way to get off the treadmill is to hit that red emergency button to stop it, or pull up that brake. We need to stop. Take a deep breath, because when we have the tendency to be stressed and overloaded, we have a tendency to go even faster, which makes things even more stressful because we're not thinking clearly. You need to have a hit the wall moment and admit that you are overwhelmed. You've got too much to do and you need some help. So step 2 is to do a brain dump, as I mentioned. When your brain is fried, when you've got too much going on there and you've reached cognitive load, it's more than we can handle. So I want you to take out a piece of paper and start dumping everything out of your mind. And I mean everything. Start writing down, what are you worried about? What do you have to do? Where's the dog going to stay while you're on vacation? All those things that go around in your head. When will I finish last year's vacation photo album? When will the kids go off to camp? Or do we have everything ready for them to go back to school? I want you to write down absolutely everything. Okay, now take your list and highlight the 3 most important things that you have to do. And then circle what's most important. Just the one. Now your focus is on just one thing. I want you to forget everything else until you take care of that. Don't worry about the rest. They're all written down. You're not going to forget anything, but just deal with that one important thing. Then the rest of the list, everything else on the list gets either deleted, delegated, or delayed until later. And I'm going to talk more about delegating later, okay? Because this is an important thing for all of us entrepreneurs to learn. We're not good at delegating. We can do it better and faster ourselves, right? So we're going to talk more about that in detail. Step 3 is to ask for help. As I mentioned, that's probably foreign to a lot of us. And remember, it's always no until you ask. People used to ask me, Mark, how on earth did you get the people you have on your board of directors? I had the retired CEO of Ultramar. I had an ex-professional football player who had his own business. I had the gentleman, Bill Anderson, who looked after Howard Webster's money. Howard Webster was the original owner of the Blue Jays. I had a VP of a bank, and I had my own accountant. that became part of my board of directors. And people used to say, Mark, how on earth did you get these people? All I did was ask. People are happy to help you. They really are. It's amazing. So I'll bet you're the first ones to offer help when it's needed. But we all tend to hesitate to ask for help. We want to do it ourselves. But when you ask for help, you're giving someone the opportunity to gift you their time. Number 4 is to go back to basics. Go back to restarting your morning routine. You know, maybe you meditate, maybe you do yoga, maybe you work out at the gym, maybe you go for a walk. But when you're overloaded, what happens? That stops. We go straight into work mode. We don't take care of ourselves anymore. So go back to the basics. Jump right back in the next day. And I want you to think about developing a habit stack for the morning. What's a habit stack? A habit stack is, you know, we automatically get up and typically go to the bathroom and then we brush our teeth. It's one thing that really results in another thing happening. Then we maybe hop in the shower. Me, I make my bed first and then I go in the shower. And then it's hair and makeup and get dressed and I'm ready for the day. That's my morning habit stack. But it's not finished there. I'm going to have a coffee and head into my office. That's when I do my meditation and I watch an inspirational video. So that's all part of my habit stack, what I do in the morning. So develop your own so that you've got that time for yourself in the morning. It's really important. Number 5 is to scale back your plans. So maybe scrap them if you have to, but scale back. Maybe we've been a bit too ambitious, wanting to get 20 new clients the first year. Think about that. What are your plans for this year? Where can you scale back and take off the pressure? Like sometimes we have so much to do at work and at home. I know I had a lot of things planned over this last weekend, and I decided that instead of physically working in my garden this next weekend, I'm going to just sit on the deck with a nice cup of tea, and I'm going to plan where I'm going to plant my perennials for the fall. Rather than working physically, just take a little bit of a break this weekend. I always say gardening takes brains and brawn, and I'm the brains. My husband is the brawn, so he gets to do the digging. But also on Sundays, I prep my breakfast for the week. Do you know how much time that saves me during the whole week? It's amazing. So think about where can you do things that will help you save time during your week. Life learning never ends. And just remember, just because we've always done it that way, doesn't mean that there isn't a better way to do it. So we're going to talk about looking at systems and how to develop systems. But first of all, I'm going to just black out the screen and I just want to share my story about when I hit overwhelm. So my business had been growing. I'd hired, I had a few people working for me, and I'd been out visiting a client in downtown Toronto, and I had been coming back to the office, and I'd been stuck on the Don Valley parking lot, which is not a rarity. It happens all the time for those of you who drive in Toronto. And so I got back to the office, and when I got there, like 4 people are rushing me. Marg. They've all got papers in their hands and they're coming at me. And I said, just a minute, can I pee first? Like I'd been in the car for 2 hours. And, then, much to my embarrassment, we had a client waiting around the corner to see me. So I was very embarrassed. But anyway, I went to the washroom, dumped everything because I've got purses, projectors, a briefcase, I'm loaded down. And I dumped all that in my office, and then I met with the client. And then after that, I went into my office and I closed the door, and I had my hit the emergency button moment. I thought, I can't keep working like this. Like it's crazy. And so I thought, I have to replace myself. I have to find someone who can do the sales to the clients that I'm looking after. So I also went back out and I met with all of my staff. And I said to them, what do people want when they call this office? And 4 out of 5 of them said Marg. And I said, no, they don't want Marg. They want information. So I want you to start giving them the information. Not everything needs to funnel through me. So that's important to start developing those things. So I decided that day I must replace myself. I needed to hire another salesperson. Now, I don't recommend rushing out, at that moment, just to get anyone who has a pulse. I want you to be very methodical and think about the best way to hire, because rushing out and just hiring the first person available is not the recommended way to hire. So be more strategic. Understand your financial implications. Like, for example, in my business, typically when I started my business, I had a technology company. Initially, we were selling overhead projectors and transparency films. Remember those? They were the tools for 30 years that people used in business and classrooms to communicate. And in the summer, all the schools were closed, all the decision makers went to their cottages or took vacations. So sales were slower in the summer. So I didn't hire a new salesperson in June. We would hire them in August or mid-August. So we had time to train them so they could hit the ground running in September when we got busier again. Now, as the business evolved and we embraced new technology, and I actually I pioneered data projections in Canada, and that's probably one of the brands I used to sell right here above me. We had a very different client. So you have to look at your own businesses and say, okay, if we're doing landscaping, we know we need more help. We need to hire early spring. But look at your businesses. When are you most busy? And hire accordingly. Prepare a documented job description. And what do I mean by that? We often have job descriptions for people, but I'm recommending you make sure it's on your server, that this job description is here and it's a living document, so that when you give it to a new employee, as their job changes, you want them to keep it up to date in your computer system. So that when you go to hire the next person for that role or to replace the person, you've got a more up-to-date job description. I also recommend you develop an onboarding process for new employees. And what do I mean by that? When we hired new people, and this was after we had a few employees at this point, their whole first week was mapped out for them. So the first day when they arrived, they typically met with either their immediate report, or when we were larger, they met with HR. And we went through and they signed all the documents, the non-competes, the non-solicitation, which is very important for all of you to have when you're hiring. And we got all the pertinent information for payroll, et cetera, et cetera. If I was available that first day, I would take that new hire to lunch. It was an opportunity for me to get to know them and for them to get to know me. And I would share with them the story of our company, where we were taking it, what my plans and goals were for the year, and how they fit into the big picture. Then throughout the week, every day they had lunch with someone else in the company, their direct manager, the head of HR, head of accounting. They met with someone, the sales manager, the technology manager. They would have lunch with someone every day that first week, because it's difficult when you start a new position. You don't know where the restaurants are, especially if it's a new location for you. So we would make them feel as welcome as possible. They also got to sit for 1 hour with our receptionist, because we wanted them to hear how she spoke to our potential clients and our clients. They spent an hour in the warehouse with the shipper receiver, because we wanted them to understand how we operated in all areas of our business. They shadowed other people in the business. They go out on the road with them as well. So that was a great process for us, onboarding. I had only 5% turnover in my staff. And we had a staff at our peak of 180 people. So it paid off. You know, if you invest time in people in the beginning and you keep them excited, trained, and always stimulated. You know, because technology is always changing, we were constantly training. And I used to use our manufacturers to train our staff. So very, very important to keep training all of your staff and developing them so they stay with you, because it's very expensive to lose people and have to start hiring again. And today in the market, it's difficult to find good people. I don't know what happened. I think half of the country retired during COVID. So we have a hard time hiring people. I want to encourage all of you, as Brianna mentioned in my introduction, stop doing the $20 an hour work and do the $200 an hour work. You know, think about it, you know, just after Labor Day next week, at the end of each day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just 4 days, at the end of the day, look at how you spent your day. What were you doing? How much of it was generating revenue? And I want you to think about that. Like if you're doing invoicing, you need to call Christina or Christine, sorry, and get her doing your invoicing for you, your bookkeeping, because you should be out doing the $200 to $300 or $1,000 an hour work. And you're limiting yourself if you're doing all of that. So how do we move from being a manager to being a CEO? Well, you know, what is the role of a CEO? And let me ask you, first of all, you know, when you think of a CEO, what do you really think of? Is it something like this? You know, middle-aged, mature, well-educated, knowledgeable, and in this case, probably well-read individual, well-informed, knows the industry he's in. This is probably typical of a CEO. But I do want to share with you that that's changing. Today, more and more women are starting their own businesses, and we're seeing more CEOs that look like this. And, you know, I worked in a sea of suits. You know, there were very few women in technology when I started my technology company in 1980, to say the least. But you know what? I did very well. I was very successful. And the business is still flourishing today, even though I'm not there. It's worldwide now in about 30 countries in the world. And my 2 sons still work there. So it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the role of a CEO. When you think of a CEO, what do you have to do? Well, he or she sets the tone of the company. And this is also the role of a business owner. You set the tone of the company. You manage the overall activities of the organization. You draw a working plan. You execute working policies for the firm. And you're responsible for many things, leading the ideation, planning, and implementation of new and long-term business strategies. Managing the company's assets and liabilities. This is a big responsibility. And I'm going to share with you a terrible mistake I made so that you're going to learn from my mistakes. Because, you know, when we were selling technology, when we were selling projectors, it wasn't so bad. But when we started selling the data projectors and the flat screen TVs, we became a target for robbery. Now, I even had second-level jewelry store security systems on our warehouses. But unfortunately, we had a break-in. Security company calls me at 2 o'clock in the morning, gets me out of bed and said, Marg, we've had a break-in, because the security trucks used to drive around and check. So, you know, you grab your clothes and jump in your car and drive like crazy to get to the office. It's far too late anyway. But when I got there and then we started answering all the questions and filling out reports for the police, we did an inventory. And we realized we'd lost about $300,000 worth of product. And, you know, ironically, about 10 of the projectors that were stolen actually belonged to the OPP, the provincial police. They were in for service. So I thought, maybe they'll try harder to find them because they're there. But anyway. So next morning when the dust settled, I pick up the phone and I call my insurance agent. How you doing? He says, I'm fine, Mark. How are you? I said, well, we have a problem. I said, we had a robbery last night and unfortunately we lost about $300,000 worth of inventory. And there's dead silence on the end of the phone. And I'm like, hello? He says, yeah, I'm here, Mark. He says, we have a problem. I said, we have a problem. He says, yeah, you only have $75,000 of insurance on your inventory. I had been so busy growing the business that I hadn't met with my insurance agent once a year to make sure I was keeping my assets safe. Now, I lost $225,000. If we weren't doing well, that could have put me under. If it had been earlier in the game, it would have put me under. So I'm sharing this story with you because it's so important for all of you to look after your assets. Now, they may not be physical assets, but they may be intellectual property. So make sure you protect that too. It's very, very important. Don't forget to get those things signed. I mean, for Mustafa there, it's very important he protects his intellectual property for developing the e-commerce platforms. So critical that you look after it. So get those non-competes and non-solicitations signed when you hire people. So we also, as the head of the organization, people look to us as the figurative head. We have to make major decisions in the organization. So you need to be informed. You need to be able to do research well. And that may mean, you know, taking surveys of your clients or potential clients. And to be strategic about your goals and ensuring the goals are smart. Now, I just want to share with you what SMART goals are for business. The first one is to make sure it's specific. The goal needs to be very specific.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Can you give us examples of intellectual properties?
Intellectual property. Well, for example, if you're developing any sort of product, everything you do around developing that product and service is your intellectual property. Okay. Let me just see if I can think of one of the people I work with. Oh, for example, we have a young woman who does mental math for kids online, and her platform is actually her intellectual property. So we don't want anyone copying her platform. And Mustafa will probably have the same issues. Other intellectual property is everything you've written or developed for your business. Maybe you have a specific way of doing things. I know when we were building racks, and so I hired the intellectual property. So for example, we built simulation rooms for the Canadian Space Agency. Let me tell you, Mark couldn't do that. I had to hire the design engineers, the technical directors, all those people that had that intellectual property. And I hired them and they became part of our team. So everything they did under our umbrella was now our intellectual property. So you have to protect it. So hopefully that answers the question. Maybe they can unmute and tell me if they need more detail. Whoever it was.
Mustafa.
Yeah.
He said thank you.
Oh, okay. So hopefully that helps him. It's really important to protect that. So starting back to SMART goals, they need to be specific, very measurable, and achievable. Like, don't be developing some big, hairy, audacious goal that you're never going to reach. You know, be realistic. And they must be time bound. Now, typically when we build a forecast or a budget for the year, it's 1 year. But if you're building goals, sales goals, I would say it's more likely to be a quarter. Every quarter, you're going to have sales goals. So hopefully that helps you. Because when you do SMART goal setting, it leads to success. And that's what we want for all of you, is to be successful business owners. Now, the role of the CEO really depends on the size of the company. You know, larger companies For example, they handle administrative tasks dealing with high-level strategic decisions and directing the growth of the company. In smaller companies, they're required to be involved in the day-to-day activities. They set the tone, the culture, the vision of the company. And in some companies, the CEO is also the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer, and the chief marketing officer. So sometimes we still have to wear many hats, but hopefully they're more controlled and you have support. Very important. Now, kudos to all of you for attending today, because an important part of life for any business owner is the continuous development of leadership skills. And we need to have really strong communication skills, the ability to make informed decisions. As I said earlier, doing research is very, very important. The ability to form good interpersonal relationships, not just with your customers, but with your suppliers and your employees. Very important. And you need to be willing to take calculated, keyword there, calculated risks. We all take risks in business, but do your math, do your homework to make sure you understand all the risks. You need to be excellent at detail orientation and organizational skills. And task delegation, we talked about that earlier. For a lot of us, it's hard to delegate. So I strongly suggest, as you hire people that are taking over some of your roles, that you develop a reporting protocol. In other words, you ask them to report back to you in a timely basis. So if I hired a new salesperson that was going to work under me, it would be every Friday, just send me a quick report. How many phone calls you made, how many meetings you had, and what were the results. Because if there's activity, we know there will be revenue. And it's a great way to mentor and train people. Like if he's having all these meetings but not selling anything, well, what are you saying? What are you doing? Give them suggestions to help them close more business. What would you have done? Part of training people is really good to have them shadow you. I think it's really a good thing to do. So develop that reporting protocol. It's very, very important. So I'm just going to share some points. I'm just going to black out the screen. I just want to share some quick pointers with you for effective leadership as we wrap up. And I want you to plan your day. This is number one. Plan your day the night before. Note down the 3 most important tasks you need to get done tomorrow. And ideally block time in your calendar. Check your calendar and see what's on your schedule. If you have meetings, you have to drive somewhere, plan your time accordingly. And then we know we'll be there in lots of time. Block off 2 to 3 hours in the morning for your most important work. When my business was at full tilt, I used to be in my office about 8 every morning, but I had an alert away on my email. Marg's in meetings all morning. She will not be replying to email until after 11 a.m. And by doing that, I found that it gave me uninterrupted time to get work done. It really did. And my receptionist knew that I was tied up. I wouldn't be available until after 11. But in the alert away, I would say, if you have an emergency, here's a number, they'll be able to help you. So it made me much more productive by doing that. Batch similar tasks, just like I said about, making breakfast on Saturday. Think about it, you can batch together emails. If you create vlogs or blogs, don't just do one. Like if the camera's set up, you've got your best clothes on, your hair's done, your makeup for the ladies, do 2 or 3, like write your scripts. Don't do everything, and then you've got to set the camera up again, write your script. Do 2 or 3 and plan better. Start a task with intention. Now, what do I mean by that? There's a big difference between this morning, I'm going to work on updating my website. And this morning, I will spend 2 hours reviewing my website and noting down what I need to update. and then create an action plan and a timeline for it. See the difference? The difference is intention. Before you dive into a task, ask yourself, what is the outcome you want to achieve? And then do a daily review. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but now take 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the day and go through your open tasks. What was good? What did I learn? What can I improve? How does my day look tomorrow? What is most important? And regularly pause. This is the last one. Regularly pause to set up systems. How can you do things better? Okay, so let's go back. Plan your day the night before. I've shared all this with you now, so I'm just going to go through so you have it in your notes. Pause to set up systems. Remember your responsibilities, setting objectives rather, planning strategy. Even from the time my business was small, I would retreat for 1 or 2 days a year. Now, in the beginning, I just retreated to my back patio and I worked on forecasting and budgeting for the next year. As the business grew, I went away to, resorts like Hockley Valley Resort with my key managers from across the country. But please take the time to strategize. Establish goals, develop company philosophy, and establish priorities. Develop your organizational structure. And for those of you who don't have an org chart, I highly recommend you build an org chart in the organization because it helps you see where there's slots you need to fill. And it also helps people know who they need to report to. Then everything doesn't come to you. Recruiting, selecting, and developing people. Establishing procedures, providing facilities. It's also the CEO's responsibility to provide capital. Sometimes difficult. Maybe we can help you. Setting standards, establishing management programs, and providing information control. And last, but certainly not least, motivating people. You need to keep them excited about the business they've joined. I have a list of 27 things that motivate people, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I believe you're going to have my contact information. Organizing tips. If you want to organize the priorities in your life, you must learn to manage yourself. There are undoubtedly certain aspects of your life and job you cannot control. You get a call from the school, your child is ill. Employees or business partners called away on an emergency. These things happen. But the bulk of things you do have control over, and you can manage those priorities. You have control over the major events. But we are creatures of habit, and existing habits may have been subconsciously developed, and new ones require conscious, constant repetition. It takes 21 to 30 days to develop new habits. Okay. And finally, myth number 1. No one ever has enough time. Reality is we all have as much time as there is. Myth number 2, there are many ways to save time. In reality, you can't save time. You can only spend it. And myth number 3, the longer you work, the more you get done. In reality, the law of diminishing returns applies. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. I've given you a lot of information in a very short time, but I think if you don't have the handouts, like everyone here in this room, you will be receiving them from Brianna. And thank you. Now, if there are any other questions, are there any questions at all, Brianna?
I'm just going to stop recording, so
okay.
No one can be on YouTube if they don't want to show their
Okay,
face.
and should we stop sharing? And then we can, if